Okay, good evening, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. Can we please rise for the pledge?
We're just going to listen.
Okay, we'll open the meeting up to public comment. Please come up to the microphone in the aisle and state your name and address the board. Okay, we have nobody for public comment. We'll go into our special presentations this evening. First would be student presentation. I believe Mr. Butler is there.
So tonight we have Luke Munson here. Luke recently achieved his Eagle Scout status, and he is going to give us a short presentation on what his Eagle Scout project was.
Hi, I'm Luke. It's all good, yeah.
Sorry.
I'm Luke. I've been a scout since 6th grade, and last summer was kind of starting my new project. And after a whole lot of deliberation with my mom and a couple of adults in my troop, I decided that I wanted to build a recording studio in school. And there were a few reasons. First of all, I love music. Whether you're listening to it or playing it, recording, I just love it. Music is like super important to me. Second of all, I love the school. The friendships I've made here with some of the teachers, and some of the peers, and some of my peers are some of the most valuable connections in my life. And third of all, I really want to get back to the music teachers, Mr. Shaw and Miss Bradley. Miss Bradley, who both made the music program here really good. And finally, I wanted to do something that could help kids in the future. I personally would have loved to have a space like this to learn about recording, actually record, like that. So I figured, why not do this for people who look like me? So after deciding that this was the project I wanted to do, I kind of broke down the next steps into phases. Phase one was research. I spent the bulk of last summer researching online through an internship and with people who know how to build studios and use them, such as Mr. Shaw, John Stork at Walter Stork Design Group, and Mr. Tannis, who teaches at Pulse Devotions. I wanted to gain as much knowledge as I could, so that it was actually a studio that could be used. And after all the research, I found that the total cost of all the supplies that I needed was around $5,800. Phase two was fundraising. Due to COVID, this phase was kind of difficult because usually Eagle Scouts fundraise for things like pancake breakfasts or spaghetti dinners or lots of events with lots of people. So obviously that's not very possible. So I started a GoFundMe, and this, as well as other donations from my friends and family, helped get me where I need to be. Phase three was acquisition. After learning what was needed to actually set up the room, fundraising all the money, I started purchasing the equipment. I used a website called sweetwater.com, and I worked with one of the sales associates to get deals and buy all the materials. I also got things such as paint and hardware donated from Lowe's. Nice. And phase four was installation. Once all of the materials actually got to my house, I needed to set a time. When I could come in and set everything up. And after countless emails back and forth with Mr. Murphy, Mr. Shaw, and Mr. Zimmer, we finally got some times that we could come in and work. And with the help of people like Stephanie Klein, my mom, custodial staff, and the three mentioned just a second ago, we fixed the walls, painted them, and installed all of the equipment in the room, including the acoustic panel on the wall, which was all the and it took 4 days to fill it. So this project was super cool. I love how it turned out, and I'm super grateful to everybody. I have a short presentation. It's just pictures of the process. Some songs I recorded, which is cool.
You just have to turn around.
Thank you, Luke. That was quite a presentation, and I wish you all luck in your future endeavors. Anybody on the board have?
Yeah, Luke, fantastic. So did I hear that you consulted with our very own John Stork?
Yeah, I did internship with him last time.
Excellent. So I know some members of the board know John Stork, world-renowned designer of recording studios, was a personal friend of Jimi Hendrix, and he actually designed Electric Lady Studios, which was Jimi Hendrix's recording studio. He's basically a music legend and known throughout the world. So you got great advice.
Luke, they're using it already, right, for the school musical?
Yeah, so we're, this is shot, and all of the students we're recording all of the vocals for the songs, and we're also doing, jazzing the song there. It's being used.
Okay.
Great job. You might need him in the library.
I have a question for you here. In the studio, I saw you had numerous acoustic sound panels. How was that designed, or who designed that? Or you just,
Design.
yeah, the design of it, placement of it?
Oh, placement, that was, me, Mr. Shaw, and, Sir Murphy, that too. We got to open the box, and then we looked at the walls, and we didn't really know how to put them on, and then I talked to Mr. Shaw, and said we should probably be a little bit asymmetric, and that would take us along. We basically talked about it.
There was a thought process?
Yeah, there was definitely,
Not just taking up wall space?
yeah, no, it's not just like that.
No, okay. Good to know.
I just want to thank you, Luke. It's actually a great legacy because so many students after you graduate will be able to enjoy it. And I like the fact that it represents scouting and should be an inspiration to other scouts in Highlands. So thank you.
Okay, high school class presentation, citizenship in action.
So I believe Mrs. Saylor is going to give us a quick little introduction to what this presentation is. Great.
faster at this than I anticipated. Good evening. I'm here tonight with my students from the Citizenship in Action class, where they have focused on identifying issues that matter to them, and then presenting it to people in power like you to affect change. They're here tonight to continue to advocate for student mental health. I would like to introduce each student. I ask them to stand as I say their name. Ethan Thompson is a senior. Genesis Maldonado is a junior. Ariella Valenzuela is a senior. Victoria Oliveri is a sophomore. We are joined by Cecilia Foglia. Missing from our class tonight, although they contributed to the presentation, is Ariana Sullivan, Keith Sager, Ronnie Byers, and Cameron Almodovar. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Ethan.
Hello everyone, how's it going? So mental health is a vital part of adolescent development, but it's often overlooked, stigmatized, or not talked about enough. The problem is that many students don't know how to ask for help or take proper action to get help. We would like to propose a solution to that. As a class, we have been researching what other states have been doing in terms of implementing mental health days into the school system. We discovered that Utah, Oregon, and Minnesota have all implemented this policy into their school systems, and they have passed laws allowing mental health days, with many more states, including New York, following closely behind them. Since the implementation of mental health days in each of these states, there have been many studies conducted that have shown the striking benefits, such as identifying students in need of counseling or therapy, or even just checking in to see how things are at home.
So our proposal is to empower students to identify their immediate need for mental health or a mental health day, and provide those students with in-school support during and after the absence.
It is important that even after Mental Health Day, there is a follow-up to keep up with the student and monitor their condition. Provided in your materials is a mock-up of what a follow-up could look like. The follow-up can be done with a counselor and will be used to document the Mental Health Day, and can also be looked back upon in the future when reviewing past incidents. When reviewing my time at Highland, I realized that these are the questions that I would have wanted to be asked. I truly think that these questions can reveal a lot about a student and their current state. This can also lead to preventative care and avoiding a larger mental health emergency in the future. We see this also as a way that students who may take a mental health day to get away with missing school will shy away from due to the extensive follow-up that will follow.
There are a lot of reasons why students don't take appropriate measures to address their mental health or to even know what to do on these days. Psychologists suggest that students can also benefit from time off for emotional self-care, especially in times of stress. To make this an educational opportunity, students would be suggested to spend the day doing activities that help them to reset their brains. Experts recommend activities that are scientifically linked to boosting happiness, such as being in nature, working out, or spending time with or finding a strong support system.
Having the skills to maintain mental health has never been more important. We were overwhelmed when we looked at the national statistics on teenage mental health from National Alliance for Mental Health and AP News. Looking at the 2015 to 2016 school year alone, more than 1 in 6 children have missed about 10% of school days nationally. All students have their own reasons as to why they were not present. However, not many school faculty members know the reasons as to why or the decisions behind it, the details behind those decisions. 17% of 8th graders were reported seriously contemplating taking their own lives within the past 12 months, which is causing the national suicide rate to increase tremendously. In 1999, the national suicide rate had an increase of 30%. Imagine the rate it has climbed to now. Think about how many students have changed with the social distancing and COVID regulations, which we are all still working through. Many parents have noticed that their children in schools are changing their attitude toward their classes. Parents were asked how they think their kids are doing during these times, as well as their opinions on how long these students can handle this sudden change in regards to their mental health.
As a student that goes to the Highland High School, I've seen Highland shift as we dealt with the COVID pandemic. As you can see from Ariel's nationwide portion of the presentation, students aren't facing unique problems, but how are our kids actually doing? We provided a survey in every single student's PE class and got responses from about 70% of the student body, with the correlating percentage of freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors represented. With the information taken from the data, you can see about 40% reported that they were doing worse in comparison, that they were doing worse in their classrooms than pre-COVID in comparison to students that are doing better, which was only 16%. On average, students rated school at about a 4.7 out of 1 through 10. As you can see from question 5, there's more red than any other color. And this red shows us that 139 students are doing worse. And unfortunately, students that are doing worse in school and students that are doing just about the same are equal to each other. You can see the rest of the survey in your board packet.
We looked into the current attendance policy for the Highland Central School District, which was last updated in 2016 and provided it to you in your board packet. There are no set rules or protocol for or against a student taking a mental health day, and New York State allows individual school boards to set this policy. We respectfully ask the board to consider adding mental health days as a reason for an excused absence because it would alleviate mental health stresses, help address the stigma associated with mental health, and it would help school officials identify students who are struggling.
And with that, I just wanted to say thank you for everyone being here. We greatly appreciate it, and our main goal is to promote positive change in our community and eventually beyond. Thank you so much.
They are happy to answer any questions that you may have or follow up at a later date. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Sale, and thank you, students. Obviously, a lot of time, a lot of thought. You know, it is important that we hear from our students. And again, just to, I know you just said it all, but just in case anyone. So basically, we're looking for the possibility of the district accepting a mental health day as an excused absence when you give it, you know, when the student is absent, just for the board and the public, and they do have to give a reason for their absence, and there's excused absences and there's unexcused absences. So the students are asking for a mental health day to be considered an excused absence, and then some system put into place in each of the buildings that there'd be follow-up with that student if they did indeed say they had a mental health day, that, you know, we would follow up and make sure, see how they're doing.
Mr. Bon Jovi, don't parents have that option now? Like if they say my child was ill or is not feeling well today, is that not an excused absence?
No, that's an excuse, but I don't think specifically that we have mental health day as an excuse, as one of the excuses.
Can I ask, I'm just looking at the legislation was introduced by Bowman in September of 2019. What was the progress of that? And I noticed you put, and thank you for the information, you mentioned that it added the language, absence due to the mental or behavioral health of the minor shall be permitted under rules that the commissioner shall establish. Did the commissioner actually establish those rules?
That's something we can definitely look into. I'm pretty sure that they are still looking into this on the top levels. But once it's passed, the legislation would allow schools in New York, as like us, to do such as what we're trying to do. So we're kind of trying to look at it like a jump start on it, and you know, to help everyone in our school and beyond.
Your charts, I think, are very dramatic, showing that from 2001 to now, that spike, that increasing spike in student suicide rates, and especially coming off of this year, the issue of mental health is very much something of importance. So I'm actually very eager to see if the commissioner can put forward some guidelines for us, and I fully support what you're doing. I just want to make sure you do it in coordination with the state education system.
Perfect, thank you.
Has any school district in the Hudson Valley moved forward with a policy such as this?
No, I don't think that we can use, I don't think the commissioner has allowed us to use mental health days just yet.
I see.
So we're waiting for that. So my suggestion, and I'm sure Mrs. Saylor is already on that track, is for her class then to, write letters and contact our local legislators to make them aware of this so that they can then put political pressure on the powers that be to get that passed.
I'll also add something else. Last month we attended a conference during school, and it was, I'm trying to think of the name. It was a mental health advocacy conference, and there was a panel of 4 students, and I was on that panel, and I talked to about a couple hundred people from around New York State, legislatures, and other teachers, social workers, and they kind of just took our input on the situation, and it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it, and it really honestly inspired me to keep going with this project, because this is a big problem, I believe, in our current situation with everything in COVID right now, and something needs to be done about it. So, and I'm hoping in the future we can promote change.
I want to say that this was a wonderful presentation. I can only speak for my life. When I was young, mental health issues were not even recognized. And later on in my career, I remember hearing whispers about people having mental issues. And more recently, as a human resource manager in my job, I was exposed to the pressure that people feel on their day-to-day life and their day-to-day mental stressors. And I so applaud you for bringing this into the forefront, and because we do have to stop this from being stigmatized and whispered about. I think we do have a long way to go, and I fully support, if nothing else, you recognizing that this is a big issue in our country with a lot of people. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say great job to all of you guys and the research and time you put into looking into it. I think, you guys hit on, obviously, one of the things that I think everybody's concern would be in terms of people taking advantage. And I really think that what you guys have proposed to put in place in terms of that follow-up not only addresses that, but really helps it even more by making that connection back to the school. So overall, great job.
I want to commend the team as well. I think this is very proactive. I love the follow-up steps because a lot of times that's where we fall short. So we have a problem with just trying to, how do we support students after that happens. So I think this is great, and I'm looking forward to learning more about mental health day and ways that we could make this possible.
I also wanted to add something else real quick. Sorry about that. I think this class, this is a new class as of this year, and I think that it should have been around long ago. It's really great because we tackle like issues that in our community, and like this is what's better than that, like it's helping others and making others feel good and helping others with problems. It's just like it makes me feel good.
I agree with you.
Thank you.
I just want to echo the rest of the board's comments. I think mental health is a critical situation right now throughout our entire country. I applaud Mrs. Saylor and the class for what you're doing right now. And I think what tells it all is the first page of your bullet, where mental health matters. Those 5 bullets there are something that we have to really look at and be able to implement into our classrooms in our school district. Once the commissioner allows us to move forward and recognize a mental health day, I'm sure this board will continue discussion and try to put that in place as a policy. So again, we commend you for the hard work, and I think this class is very beneficial to getting the word out that mental health does matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on with our special presentations, I believe our assistant superintendent is going to speak about the climate and culture survey results.
Yes.
Sarah?
I think I'll stand out there. My teaching background is easier for me to talk to someone when I'm talking a little bit. But as part of the presentation, you want to put in front of you, there's a copy of the PowerPoint, of course, but then there's also this very, very thick packet that's a supplement to the presentation. I'm going to talk about it a little bit as I do the presentation. I will grab the microphone, even though I can do that here, and I'm going to say it quicker. See if I can sound all of this.
So yes, I just wanted to introduce, so this is the survey that we did in February. And certainly a lot has been going on, so our, we would have liked to have had this to you, fast, but really with everything that's going on and the in and out and getting students back into school, believe me, we have been burning the candle at both ends, kind of keeping the district running and in a good place. So the moral is there is a lot to unpack here. So I know that we're just giving this to you tonight. So I don't expect, Mr. Dudley, we don't expect for us to be able to kind of review and absorb all this information because this is a very thick packet. This packet has every single question that was asked and all the breakdown of the results. So what we will be doing is we're giving this tonight. Mr. Dudley will do a review, really, of the results. We're going to post this on the district website, not just the presentation, but all the results. So complete transparency so the public can see what the results of every single question was, and then we'll follow up probably either at the second meeting in May or that meeting in June to talk a little bit more about where we're going and some of the steps we're taking. Okay?
Maybe I need to talk over close. So as Mr. Bon Jovi said, this is really a bird's eye view overview of the climate and culture results from the surveys that students, parents, and teachers and staff participated in February. Just a quick reminder of the reason that we did this. There are really 3 factors that went into this decision to do the climate and culture survey. First, our designation by New York State Department of Education as a targeted school improvement school, both in the elementary and the middle school, specifically for Black and African American students, but certainly in general, just looking at the progress of all of our students. Then the testimonials that several of our students, alumni, and community members presented to the Board of Education at the July 7th Board of Education meeting, and then our overall concerns, and certainly our previous presentation plays right into this information, our ongoing concerns about mental health of students as we go through this pandemic year of school. So all of those things together indicated to us that we needed to know more information about where our students were, how they were doing, what they felt when they were here in school. So we conducted the survey. These allowed people to share in a confidential way how they felt about different topics within the school district. And we're using this first set of results really as a baseline, as a starting point. This isn't a survey we're going to do once and then never look at again. We do plan to continue this into next school year so that we can look at how things have changed or not, what areas have we grown, what areas are we good with, and what areas do we need to continue to do work. We're also going to be sharing the results of the survey with our district equity committee so that it can inform the work that's being done there. We'll be doing that at the meeting next Tuesday night. As far as participation, this was the first time that we've done a survey like this. It was all online. I will say I was a little disappointed as far as the family, parent, guardian involvement. We had 257 responses. Considering we have about 700 plus students, even if you think two students per family, that's not a great response. But still, it's 257 parents who told us their thoughts about what's going on in the school. So we'll look at those results shortly. We had 122 teachers who responded, which is about 80% of our teaching staff. And then staff would be any non-teaching positions. We had 57 responses. Again, it's not a huge percentage. I'm hoping as we do this more and that they see we use the results of this to make decisions and make change, that we'll have better participation on that moving forward. And then for students, we had two different surveys. One survey was very specific to ideas of equity and inclusion. That was only offered to grades 6 through 12 students. That's the only group that this company makes the survey for. And then there's the climate and culture survey. That's grades 3 through 5, and then a separate survey for grades 6 through 12. Again, I'd like to see more participation there, but I do think partly this was in the middle of when we were also doing surveys about coming back to school and what people wanted there. This was times when we had many students home quarantining and partly in school, partly out of school. So, it's still, we got good results, and I think it's representative of our students. But I'm hoping the next time we do this, it'll be a larger percentage of the student population who will participate. So, looking first, the first survey, social emotional learning, student supports and environment. So before I really go through the results that are in the PowerPoint, what I'd like you to do is just to look at this packet. Because I want to show you what's in here. I'm not going to go through the entire packet for you. There's a lot here. I think it's 33 pages. But if you open it up, the first page gives you a summary overview, which is pretty much what's up on the screen. And then what you have are, so there's 5 topics in this survey. The next page you see where it says rigorous expectations at the top, it tells you every one of the questions in the survey that related to rigorous expectations, and then gives you the results. And this first packet, this first about 5 to 6 pages, is specific to the 3 through 5 students who participated in that survey. So you can take time on your own to go through and really look at those responses. Certainly, the responses are more nuanced than what we're presenting up here. But it gives you much more detail. As Mr. Bonjovi mentioned, we will be posting these on the website so the community members can look at it as well. And then I want you to go to page 9 in that first section. What you also will see at the end of each of these packets is a breakdown of who responded. So again, these are students in grades 3 through 5. And they ask questions or answer questions like, what is your gender? You see that 54% were female, 46% were male. Your race, ethnicity, what kinds of grades do you usually get? Primary language you speak at home. So each one of the surveys has a breakdown like that, so you can really see, of the parents who responded, what was their ethnic background, or what is their level of education, or again, male, female, that kind of thing. So when you turn the page from page 9, you start the next packet, and you can see this is grades 6 through 12, and how they responded to these questions. And the same thing is repeated. It gives you every one of the questions and the specific results of those questions. Everyone kind of see what that is? I just wanted to orient you a little bit there. And I have to say, the online version that we have is even more interactive than that. So each of our administrators can actually drill down on individual questions. You can filter, if you want to filter specifically by female, white students who get mostly C's. You can look at how that group of students responded to each of the questions. So that's some of the mining that we're doing right now to look at the data on a much more granular level. So anyway, so as I'm talking about this, keep in mind that there's a lot more to the story than is being presented up here. It was the only way that I could really think of doing it that we weren't here for 3 hours. Going through everything. So, if we look at the 3 through 5 results, it looks okay, decent. There's 5 categories: rigorous expectations. And this is the expectations that students have, or teachers have for students. School climate, how students feel in the building, sense of belonging, similar idea. Valuing of math and valuing of ELA. So how do students feel about those subjects? And they ask questions like, if you look at our most favorable responses there, how important is it to you to do well in math? 91% of our third through fifth graders who responded said that that's really important to them, that they want to do well in math. They also believe that math will be very useful to them in the future, 87%. It's going to be interesting when we get to the 6 through 5. Not quite so high. Rigorous expectations. When you feel like giving up, how likely is it that your teacher will make you keep trying? 86% of the students felt like their teachers pushed them to continue to try. So I just gave you some examples of the questions. Like you saw in that packet, you get much more detailed information about exactly how all of that breaks down. How often do teachers seem excited to be teaching your classes? Again, students, 86%. And I think in the year of a pandemic where we were teaching remote, we were teaching at home, and we were in person, I think that says a lot about who our teachers are and what they're trying to do this year. But then we've also, got information there that helps us move forward, that we can work on. Valuing of ELA. How often do you use ideas from ELA in your daily life? Only 33% of third through fifth graders feel like ELA is valuable to them moving forward. Now, that tells us a lot, right? It says maybe we need to think about how we're presenting that information to them about reading, or how we're presenting the importance of reading for them moving forward. Of course, these are conversations we're going to get into more in depth. At your school, how much does the behavior of other students hurt or help your learning? Now, this is interesting. 56% of students went more on the negative than the positive side, but when you look at the breakdown of that question, and that's why it's important to look at that packet, there's about 5 different ways you can respond. So it could be very helpful, somewhat helpful, and actually the highest response there, the most number of responses, was something along the lines of they don't really hurt or help me. It's neutral. But that's kind of emphasized on the more negative side. How often does your teacher make you explain your answers? 63% of respondents said that happens in their classroom, which means that there are, 37% that they're not having that happen. So, that's a very easy thing that we can talk about with teachers to help the metacognition for students as they look at content or problems. So that's the grades 3 through 5. Grades 6 through 12. Again, this is a very similar survey, more about social, emotional, and academic work. Of course, the questions are developed for students who are a little bit older, a little different developmental level, but still those same categories. Again, high school, middle school students say math students, how often do you use ideas from ELA class in daily life? That's interesting feedback there. How do we frame the conversation in ELA? School climate, at your school, how much of the behavior of our students hurt our public learning? Again, that same kind of, it's more of a scale. How often do you use ideas from math class in your daily life? Only 31% of students said that they did that. How connected do you feel to adults at your school? That one was one that surprised me as being so low, 31%. I think that doing this during the year of the pandemic and remote, I think that had a huge impact on that question. But I think it helps us really think about what we need to do into September to reinforce that connection with students when we come back in the fall. And what can we do from now to the end of the year to increase that number. So then there was a second survey, the Equity and Inclusion Survey. Again, this is only for students in grades 6 through 12. I'm not going to go through it quite so detailed. There was only 2 topics or 2 categories on this survey: diversity and inclusion, cultural awareness and action. The diversity and inclusion questions are a lot more about how do you feel and interact with people in school, especially people who maybe don't look like you or talk like you. Cultural awareness and action. Those questions focus a little bit more on how comfortable you are with students as well as teachers are talking about other cultures, other people, having conversations about race or equity or inclusion. So as far as more of a sense of belonging, which to me is a little bit big diversity and inclusion, I think we're in better shape. Having conversations about the difficult questions about what's going on in the world right now, maybe we're not so comfortable. That didn't surprise me. I think we're at the very beginning of this work, and I think a lot of people feel uncomfortable and don't know how to manage difficult conversations. So this falls right in line, I think, with everything we discussed with our equity committee meetings and with the conversations that I've had with teachers and that teachers have with students. Each of those. So teacher staff surveys. Staff responses, again, we didn't have all that many. This would be people in non-teaching positions. It could be anyone from clerical workers to food service to TAs, aides, transportation, custodial. I don't think they break that down at the end in that section. School climate was not so bad, 62%. Professional learning. Many people in this category didn't feel that we provided good professional development, things that were very relevant to their life and their work. That's certainly excellent feedback for us as we look at the end of the year, this summer, moving into next year. Teacher responses, educating all students, school climate, faculty growth mindset, professional learning. Again, I do think that pandemic teaching had a huge impact on the way people responded this year to some of those categories. I know in talking with teachers are feeling more disconnected, that it's more difficult to make connections with students, and certainly, there's a definite feeling that no matter how hard you try, it's difficult to really feel good about how you're teaching this year, and I think that came across in the teacher responses, especially in the professional learning category there. One of the things I found very interesting in this, when you have the time to go through and look at the demographic breakdown at the end, for both of these categories, one of the questions is if a friend or neighbor wanted to get a job in your district, would you recommend the district? Would you encourage them to work in the district? And both of those categories overwhelmingly said yes. They would, that this is a good place to work, that they would encourage people to be a part of this district. So I took that a little bit as, okay, this is a place for people to say what they want and what they need, but overall, they feel pretty good working here, which is, of course makes you feel good. but definitely something that we're trying to create in our staff. Family and school relationship. Again, it was a very small sample size. School safety, for the most part, people feel pretty safe in our schools. Safe both physically, I think, as well as emotionally. School climate, that was not so good. School fit. There were some open-ended questions in this where people could type in. We had a lot of comments about remote learning, distance learning, asynchronous days. Those are kind of the biggest hits if you looked at word frequency and all this. So, and as I mentioned, we were doing the survey right in the middle of February when we were, a lot of people who were quarantining and not, and kids were kind of in and out, and you're closing down and opening up. So I do think that had an impact as far as school climate went. And, as a parent of a school-age child myself, it's been hard watching my child this year not experience things in the same way that they had before. So I definitely think that comes out. We'll be spending more time really looking individually at each of the questions that you've seen that happen there. Overall, again, big bird's eye view. We'll be spending time in each of the buildings really looking more specifically at the data for each building. But we need to emphasize relationship building as we transition back to more in-person attendance, as well as going into the 2021-22 school year in September. It definitely reinforces that we need to continue the work of the Equity and Inclusion Initiative that we started this year. Really, this year has been more of kind of taking a temperature and seeing where we are. Next year, I think we'll really reap the benefits of starting and doing the work. Prioritize authentic application of math and ELA for students. So making sure we're looking at math and ELA and helping students understand how this actually applies in their life on a daily basis. I think that's certainly a way to reinforce the work in those content areas. And then focus on meaningful professional development for faculty and staff. One thing I've already started doing at my instructional council meeting last week, that was our main topic of conversation, was what do teachers need and want going into the summer, as well as planning for next school year. So we're already starting that conversation. We know that we need to do some work as far as adjusting our curriculum to this past year. So we're already starting about what should that look like? How can we do that vertical integration? But trying to get more feedback from staff on what they want. So then moving forward with this, building level administrators will be sharing specific building level data with their staff, doing more work, like I said, around, okay, you're not happy with the professional development this year, so what is it that you need? This is how students are feeling about coming in or being in school. What are some things as an entire staff that we can do about that? Like I mentioned, we're sharing results with District Equity and Inclusion Committee, so that can really lead their work. As I've mentioned in the past, there's 4 subcommittees: staff diversity, curriculum and instruction, school climate, and professional development. So, all 4 of these will be all 4 of those subcommittees will be able to look at this information and get some direction. And then our plan is to administer the survey 3 times next year. So we'll have a beginning, middle, and end of year set of data to look at. With the idea that we might not do the exact same survey because we do have some ability to pick and choose some of the questions, but after looking at this year, thinking about what we really want to focus on going into next year so we can be very targeted in the responses that we're looking at. Any questions?
Anyone have any questions for Sarah?
More of a comment than a question. There was another statistic that stood out up there to me, and it was the one where do students feel comfortable asking for extra help? It came in at 41%. which I thought was low. So just, you know, incorporate that in some of your thoughts, possibly PD, and it is possible we're doing everything we can, and we know that it is a COVID year for this data collection, but I was just, it troubled me for some reason.
I think one of the things is for me, of course, we all have assumptions. And, you know, we gave the survey and I had assumptions about what would come back from the survey, what I thought we did really well and what I thought we would need work on. In some cases, those were reinforced, but there were definitely some surprises, similar to what you said, of, wait, you know, relationships is what I thought we did really well, and that really didn't come back in the survey. And again, not to make excuses, but I do think this year, you know, it's kind of wide open, but I definitely think we need to double down on a lot of that kind of work.
You seemed disappointed with the responses for math and ELA. For me, they seem to track naturally. Through the 3 to 5, the application of mathematics is very practical and it's very obviously practical, so the response would be, they would see that. ELA, I think, would require a more subtle metacognitive circumspection that they wouldn't be aware of at that time, and even possibly until after they exit our system. Most of it relates to storytelling or narrative, and there's a subtlety in the instruction as far as making you aware of cultural applications, communication, the finesse of communication. And I think it would be the rare student that would recognize those applications as they were taking place. So I'm not surprised or disappointed in those. I think what might be interesting is a postgraduate survey to find out how they view the applications of things they learned.
I'll agree with that because it definitely took me about 15 years before I really felt good about math and how it applied to my life actually. But on the other hand though, I do think that I think that there is value in appreciating, but also thinking about how do we help students understand now what could be helpful to them later, because otherwise they're not going to engage.
For me, the telltale symbol was that drop off from 6 to 12, where you saw mathematics practical application drop, because now we're shifting from the practical to theoretical. You know, once you go past algebra, now we're shifting into more theoretical realm unless you're going into, of course, engineering. And so the practical applications or the awareness of this practical applications begins to diminish, and I think that shows.
Yes, right, and so again, something's not so surprising, really, in a way, but still can influence how we talk about or how we present the brain.
Is there a way to disaggregate data for 6-8 and 9-12?
Yes, there is. So it has where each building can individually look at their scores, very granular. So you know, they can really break down by building. And that, you know, we do another presentation towards the end of the year. We can break it down all that way.
And will the open-ended questions, will they be available on the website? Those responses?
Let me look at them again, probably, but sometimes kids aren't the most appropriate in what they respond. So I just want to look through them one more time to make sure, but, and there are, some of the questions have a lot. There's some of them have like 500 responses, but yes, I just want to go through them one more time.
Okay, thank you, Sarah, for all that work, putting that
It
together.
took me a while to reach the mic. If I could relay back to Mike's comment, how comfortable is your child in asking for help from school adults, 41%. This could very well tie back to the presentation on mental health, being afraid to ask for help, and because of perhaps stigma.
Absolutely.
It can all tie in together.
No, I really, I was thinking, I didn't really connect it when we were talking about the order that we were doing the presentations, but as I was sitting there, I was thinking, well, this is perfect.
Yeah.
It really flows very well into the climate and culture. And where I do think that this very unique year that we're in some ways is maybe giving us a truer baseline than maybe, you know, it might have given us last year, where students and adults weren't thinking about mental health in quite the same way, or might maybe would have felt more uncomfortable sharing some of that too. So, absolutely.
I did have one question in regard to professional learning. know, and I guess I'm gonna be very interested to hear what are we missing?
I will be too. I'm going to say it that way. I don't know. I was surprised by the numbers myself, and I'm interested to have more conversation with teachers. And I also would say, numbers only tell you part of the story. So to be part of this next step, and maybe that's what's happening between now and the end of the year, is having conversations. And so I think with Dr. LeBlanc, I think we can use this as a starting point for doing more focus groups with parents as well as with students and faculty. But I think also as administrators to be talking with our staff about some of those perspectives too. And sometimes it's how staff or students or whoever is doing the survey interpret the question in that moment too. And again, because you have to make a choice, right, between one of 4 options, it doesn't always tell you the whole story. So I think this at least directs the questions that we're asking a little bit more. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, acceptance of reports. Be it resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, acknowledges reviewing and accepting the following reports as presented at this meeting. Board of Education meeting minutes, March 16, 2021. Can I have a motion, please? Motion by Ed, second by Tom. Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So carried. Our monthly principal report, Mr. Freer.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Just an update. We started the 3 through 5 ELA assessment this week. That was yesterday. I wanted to give you an update on the opt-outs. There were 10 in 3rd grade, 11 in 4th grade, 24 in 5th grade, for a total of 45 at the elementary school. I think it's also important to note that 111 of my 3 through 5 students were basically exempt because they are remote learners. But I did have a small group of students come in today on Remote Wednesday to take ELA. I had 3 4th graders and 1 5th grader. So those were parents that wanted the students to have an opportunity to show what they have learned. Just want to point out what's going on in the elementary school. I don't know if you've taken a look at this map. In my report, I showed you, or I told you that we're experiencing a large amount of traffic at the elementary school, so we created this map to basically tell parents how to come onto our property and safely navigate our school. Our parents have to be acknowledged for the diligence that they're following this. This was not an easy thing for them to do because many of them are sitting in line for a good 20 minutes. Some are getting to the school 40 minutes before we dismiss so that they can be at the front of the line. 120 cars is a lot of cars at the elementary school, but between the parents doing what we're asking and my staff getting the children ready to go, we're able to dismiss those 120 students in about 21 to 22 minutes, which is unbelievable, and we haven't lost anybody. We don't plan to. All right, so the only thing I would say about this is I do now have some parents that are trying to skirt this by coming in at 2 o'clock to pick up their children so they don't have to wait in line, which the whole goal was to get students back into school to increase the amount of contact time they had with teachers. So now as we have parents that are coming in earlier and earlier, we're shaving off more minutes. So we're having those conversations with parents. We understand that there's emergencies. Obviously, we're never going to tell somebody they can't have their child. But obviously, we want to maximize the amount of time that they are in front of a teacher. So that's that. That was a big undertaking. I want to thank Ray Wilt for his support and his direction at the top of the hill. He's like a human cone with arms. If you get a chance to come through and you see him working, actually, if you don't have a reason to be there, don't come through. That's just one more car. But Ray has done an incredible job and needs to be commended, as does Mr. Darling, because he handles all of the organization inside the building as I'm walking to the top of the hill and radioing those family car numbers. So enough about that. Last night I had the privilege of joining the Marist Education Department Advisory Council. This is the first time that I have been part of that group. And we had it was an hour-and-a-half meeting and discussions on how to strengthen the teacher preparation program at Marist. And I thought something that was very interesting and tied right back into what we're doing here in Highland is probably a good 45 to 50 minutes of the meeting was about how to diversify the candidate pool. And it ties right into the work that we're doing here in Highland. There are no great answers, and these were educators from across the region, not just small schools, but large schools, city schools, and they're having some difficulties as well. So that was one of the points that was brought up: is how do we increase the candidate pool when we're looking for diverse candidates? So stay tuned. We'll see what Marist comes up with. I know New Paltz has initiatives going on, so does Vassar. Vassar actually has a series this weekend. It's open to the public. It's actually run by the Asian Equity Committee at Vassar College. If anyone's interested in that, I have that link. And that's all through their education department as well. It's really hard to talk in this thing and not hyperventilate. Does anyone have any questions? It's a lot easier to talk when you're sitting in front of your computer when you have this thing down.
I just had a question about the Reflex online program. Could you talk a little more about what type of program it is, how it's being used in school?
Yeah, that's a math initiative that we are just at the beginning stages of. So it's an online program that actually Mr. Darling is probably more versed in speaking of that, but our math department are the ones that have been pushing for another way to basically to take that screen time and make it meaningful for students. So we're at the very infancy stages of rolling that out, as I mentioned in my report. So we can give you more detail in an upcoming report.
Yeah, I'm just curious if it's more like adaptive or is it game plans, like extra math, like what type of?
It's very similar to many of those, but it's much more intuitive, and it has, it meets the students where they are, and it adapts so that the students can progress. Obviously, we want to excel them faster than some of those other programs allow. Teachers actually are able to work in the background, if I'm correct on this, I believe I am. They're able to work in the background to assign certain things. But the computer also, it's intuitive and it knows what the student's skills are, where the weaknesses are, and adapts some of the independent lessons that they're doing to reinforce skills that are, show up as weaknesses.
Like IXL, iReady type of?
Yeah, I don't know iReady. I know Mr. Darling does from being a Newburgh, but yeah, similar to IXL. And years ago, there was another one that was not very good, but it did not progress the students. And we used it in the district, but it was one of those first generation math technology things, and it was more gameplay than it was, meeting the specific needs of students. It was everyone ran through the same program. That's not what these new generations of interfaces are.
I can actually speak from experience on that one. So before I
Are
read
you
your
you're
report,
using it?
yeah, so my daughter being home, she knows that I don't allow her just to do what the teacher gives her. I always give her extra work, and I usually make my own tests. So lately, she's been coming to me, can I just do reflex, please?
There's going to be a survey question, and you're not going to do very well.
So just to let you know, I mean, she was doing, they were using another application, I think Extra Math or something.
Yes.
And that one, both of my kids were really actually taken back by it, because when you got a wrong answer, it went,
Yeah.
In this one, she actually really is enthusiastic to do. It is very, she was sitting next to me when I was doing my work the other day doing it, and it is high intensity. It keeps you going. It is kind of like a gameplay, but there is a lot more math than a lot of the other ones that she has tried, so. definitely a positive experience from us on that one.
And once we finish the pilot, obviously, we're looking to see if this is something we want to continue into the next school year. So we'll give you more detail about that at a future meeting before we make an expenditure, and that's what we plan to do.
The 264 students is impressive because I know the TSI category really focused on a lot fewer students.
Correct.
As far as those that qualify. And I do see the PD there, and I appreciate the students interacting with a different program. What else are we doing in addition to piloting a new math program? Are these kids getting extra time? Have we broken off a specialized program for those kids? Aside from PD, I would ask you to, how can students be better represented in your report, aside from just interacting with that program? Are they progressing?
Well, I think you're going to see that in the math benchmarks. I think you will see that as the benchmarks, are basically apples to apples rather than we're looking. You're looking at benchmark data that obviously, and not to keep blaming the pandemic, but it's very difficult when you're trying to measure where students were from one year to the next to see whether or not you're hitting the mark. But I think the more important thing is the assessment that the teachers are doing, that formative assessment in the classroom, and they're changing instruction and meeting those kids where they are. And now that we have kids back 4 days a week, it's a lot easier for teachers and also for students to have that interaction, whereas over a computer, very difficult for elementary kids that are at that, those early stages of gaining those skills, for teachers to see what students were able to do on a regular basis.
Well said, Joel. I appreciate the comments, and I do understand the challenge.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I also just want to commend all the staff that have been doing the drop-off and the pickup. The process is flawless, really does appear. I think a big part of that is the communication. That map you put together, I think, is fantastic. It's easy to show other people, somebody else. When my husband went and picked him up, where do I go? I sent him that, and he was like, okay. So, communication, we always say, is a big part. I think you guys did a really good job on this one. I think it's showing.
Thank you. We were concerned with the blue arrows, that people were going to expect to see blue arrows on the pavement. Those were just there. Any other questions? Thanks so much.
Thank you, Joel.
Good evening. I have one addition to my board report. To welcome back both hybrid cohorts to 4 days of in-person instruction, the HMS community, to welcome kids back to 4 days of in-person instruction, we did a virtually and in-person, the Pack is Back Spirit Week. Throughout the week, the staff and students came to school dressed in their HMS blue and gold, Hawaiian shirts, sports-themed gear, and their PJs. It was a great way to welcome back our students to in-person instruction. Any other questions?
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Megan, thank you for the newsletter. It's a good piece and a lot in there to read.
Great, thank you.
Enjoy it. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. I just have a few brief additions to the high school principal's report. Our AP exams will run from May 18th to June 10th. All advanced placement exams will be administered here at the high school. We have 139 students taking a total of 235 exams, which is on par with what we usually have each year. The varsity volleyball team won their Section 9 Class B championship yesterday, Tuesday, against Spaten Kill High School. Congratulations to the coach and all the players for their victory.
That's the first time the volleyball team has ever won that.
I am very happy to report that it looks like we will be able to have a prom this year. Though we're still working out all the details, it will be an outdoor event only for members of the senior class. More information will follow once specifics are ironed out, of course. And finally, I am thrilled to report that one of our seniors, Elena Cupo, who attends Ulster Bosie's cosmetology program, has been named valedictorian of the Career Tech Center. Congratulations to Elena and her family. I didn't research this. I can say the past 3 years, we've had either the salutatorian and valedictorian from Highland High School of the CTE program are Highland High School students, which makes me very proud. So congratulations
Absolutely.
to all of them
Kids.
and to Elena. Yes, thank you. And that's all I have this evening.
Any questions for Mr. Zimmer? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our director's report. I believe we have most of our directors here this evening, so if you have any questions for their reports, you can ask them.
Just have a comment. Just want to thank the building and ground staff for all the work getting the classrooms ready for the kids to come back to school ways a week. And that's a lot of time, extra time every time that, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yes. I guess, again, our directors are doing an excellent job. If there's not any questions,
Not so fast.
Thank you.
Not so.
Not so fast. Takes time with this mask on. I just want to ask Mr. Miller about our field conditions. I know we've got spring sports and that kind of thing starting, and the weather hasn't been the most agreeable, but where are we at? I heard that you were chopping up some wood.
It's a push. The short seasons has been pretty tough. To keep things up to where they gotta be and get them started off and get fields ready. We're working on that full bore. Hopefully our baseball and softball fields will be where they need to be when we have our first games. The main field isn't paying the cost yet, but we're working toward that, so I think we'll be all right there. The short season's really bad, a lot of pressure to get stuff done.
All right, thank you, Pete. Keep up the good work.
Yes, no, thank you to Mr. Moore and Mr. Brown's people. I know we are short a person because we had someone resign, so I believe it was added to this board meeting, so we will be replacing that person, so we will have an experienced ground person coming in starting May 3rd. So I know that besides the regular grounds people, that Mr. Miller himself has been out there working on the lawns. So, I mean, when he started, that shirt was white, now it's green. And that's just from all the, working with all the grass out there. So, thank you very much, Mr. Miller.
Yeah, no doubt. And listen, if we get shorthanded, I mean, there are third-party vendors that we can potentially reach out to for some of the work. But thank you.
Kathy, thanks for that data on the bus runs. That's new data, the number of and.
Yeah, I've been keeping up with that every month.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you.
I think one of the other comments that came to me by community, and it's for Carol, as far as while the iPad for video streaming does kind of suffice in the short term, it's not a long-term solution. So I'm aware that we've replaced Pixelo and we're possibly dealing with another vendor, but some of the other things that aren't as fixed, are you looking at getting maybe some additional video equipment to improve those types of streams?
For sports in general?
Any event, but for example, sports, it's a good example.
Frank and I have been working with Huddle, and we have podcasters that are ready to go out to some of the fields. The football field will get a camera this summer, hopefully, on it, so we don't have to worry about that at all. And then he'll have a couple of portable systems that at least he'll be able to record and then move up to Huddle, and parents can see it there. That's kind of what he, preferred. If we're not wired, it's hard to do live stream. So that's what the problem is. So we're wired out at the football field. We have a solution for there. I'm not really quite sure what's been going on out there, because the kids were ready, they had everything going. And then the gym is wired, right? They're using Huddle.
Right.
So that's, and then we have the 2 portable units that he's gonna be able to take around for the spring.
And you'll support that venture as well? I mean, it's just, these are high-tech solutions and not necessarily the most high-tech individuals. So they rely on you for support and to make sure it goes well?
Yeah, yes, we've been setting up the iPads, and he has the huddle accounts, and the coaches know how to do it supposedly. So once we get it out there, we get the instructions to the kids. I work with Frank. It's still in initial stages, but I think it's ready to work, as far as I know.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you to our directors. Approval of Committee on Special Education minutes. Be it resolved, Board of Education hereby accepts the recommendations of CPSE and the CSE committees according to the information provided in regard to meetings and classified status of students. Meeting date range March 9th, 2021 to April 13th, 2021. All meetings were held virtually through Zoom virtual meeting platform. Total of 183 meetings. Please note, 159 meetings were annual reevaluation meetings for 2021-2022 school year's IEPs, and 24 meetings were for amendments, initials, etc. for the 2020-2021 school year. All meetings disclosed have finalized IEPs. Can I have a motion, please? Motion by Ed, second by Tom. Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So carried. Personnel, ask if you'd like to take personnel as a block from A through M. If you'd like to pull out any individual position, we can do that. Is everyone okay with personnel A through M? Okay, can we move that to a resolution, please? Someone? Heather? Second? Second, Mike? Discussion?
Question. The bridge after school is having a fee heading for the high school and the elementary school. But is there middle school people in there? Or-
So for tonight, we don't have the middle school people finalized, but we'll have that. The program will start still on May 3rd, and we'll approve them on the 4th.
Anyone else?
Could we please give thanks to the faculty that are going to be working at this after-school academy? This is really great.
Yes, no, it's a great program. Karen Brooks is organized it and is running the program, serving as the administrator in charge. So I want to thank Karen Brooks for all her hard work on that.
Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion made by Heather, second by Mike. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So carried.
Yes, Mr. Brown, we have one of our hirees here, so if Natalie could just stand up, and if you could just introduce yourself and just tell the board what your position and building is.
Hi, I'm Natalie Casado. I'm doing a monitor at the elementary school.
Thank you very much. I know it's been a position that we've needed for quite a while, so we appreciate and welcome to Highland. I know you had some extra help you had to do with your family, so you can scoot out if you need to. So thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, our student reps, Jason Sparrow.
Yes,
Sparrow, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So in regards to how the middle school is doing, the students were nervous at first coming back, but they have quickly adapted to the larger amount of students that are now present in the middle school, and they're actually very glad to be back together and connected with other students from the other cohort. I can say that the same situation is reflected in the high school. We are really glad to see like our other friends after the months
I don't mean to interrupt, I just don't hear her through the mic system. I want to hear
Right
her.
up to the mic.
Is it on?
They should be picking it up.
Okay, is it on right now?
There you go.
Okay,
Here's something.
so should I repeat myself? Yes. Okay. So in regards to how the middle school is doing right now, the students were very nervous coming back and merging with the other cohort, but right now they've adapted quickly to the larger amount of students in the school, and they're quite excited to have everybody back. I can say the same situation is reflected in high school. We're really glad to see all our other students from other cohorts after months of isolation, and we're really having fun. Like every day feels like the first day of school again. For the high school, we have some upcoming exciting events that we're planning for the school and the seniors, so I'll pass it on to Jake to elaborate on this.
So starting with the high school, I can say that we will continue our traditional powder puff game, seniors versus juniors, and I know that my senior girls are very excited to be playing this year, and same thing for junior girls. And then for the middle school, elementary school, I've heard that the plexiglass has been installed seamlessly, and the students have been dealing with it very well, and are happy to be back 4 days a week and interacting with their classmates.
Thank you, Jake and Farah. Any questions for them?
When's the game?
The game will be June 4th at 6:30 p.m.
I know, you, a few meetings back, you expressed some concerns and anxieties among the students about coming back in to mitigate. Have any of those been alleviated, or are those concerns still as present as they were back then?
Some of those concerns have been alleviated because teachers have been reaching out to us, and if we had any concerns about it, we would go to them and we would talk for a long time. So teachers have helped in this whole process, so I'm very thankful for them in this process. For anxiety, there's still some anxiety among us, but I feel like Highland creates a safe environment for its students, so we're kind of seamlessly transitioning back into a normal year at least for the rest of the year.
Thank you. Any other questions for our student reps? Thank you, Jake and Farah. Under business and operations, donation acceptance. Be resolved, Board of Education, upon a recommendation of the superintendent, graciously accepts the following donation from the Highland Music Booster as follows. 20 CAD U49 Studio USB microphones valued at $719.82 for the use of facilitating home recordings and post-production of student performances as a response from a request for funding from Dan Shaw High School band teachers. Can I have a motion, please? Motion by Ed, second by Heather. Discussion?
I'd just like to once again thank the Highland Music Boosters for this very generous donation to our music program.
Agreed. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Assistant Superintendent?
Good evening again. Come on, right? All right. So just a couple of things. First, I don't think we knew this before she submitted her report, but the federal government has extended the no-cost breakfast and lunch into the 2021-2022 school year for students specifically. So we're very excited to hear that. I think, personal opinion, I think it's the right direction. That we think we continue with that direction, but it definitely will help with the transition back to school next year, hopefully fully in person. So that was just very, very exciting from the federal government. I did want to just briefly talk about the data that we shared with you from the math benchmarks and the middle school STAR report. You have a copy of it, I believe, in front of you if you're not looking at it on your device. So just very quickly to kind of orient you on it, if we look at the side that says Highland Elementary School on the top, the math benchmark results. So just to remind people, the math benchmarks are locally created by each grade level, going through the specific standards for their grade level. They're a little bit more like more of a unit test, except it's several units at a time. We give them quarterly, so they're looking at the standards across a period of time. And what we have here is a comparison between the one that was administered in either November or December and the one that was then administered in February and March. There's a sliding time frame here just because, just in a difference of for each grade level of when they get to the point where they need to administer the test. You can definitely see if you compare from the benchmark 1 to the benchmark 2, you can see a little bit of difference in the level that students achieve. And if you look at the left-hand column there, you have the grade level, and then the benchmark is broken down by the levels that we're familiar with from state testing. So level 4, roughly correlates to a 91 to 100. It's not quite that easy, I guess I'd say, if you look at the state assessments, but it's a good rule of thumb. Level 3 is in that 80 to 90, sorry, I have a hard time to do. Level 2, 66 to 79, and then level 1 is below 65. So for the most part, students are doing okay. We did see a little bit of drop off in some grade levels between benchmark 1 and benchmark 2. But the thing to remember, again, with the elementary benchmarks is it's not, it doesn't spiral in quite the same way as when we look at the STAR report. So this is, benchmark 1 is really looking at data from the content that is presented September to November, and benchmark 2 is really looking at the content from December through February or March when it's presented. But this is the larger aggregate look at it. The individual teachers look very closely at the work that individual students do, so they can really pinpoint what standards students are having a difficult time with. So they get granular with it. To kind of talk to your question earlier, Mike, they are looking at it on a case-by-case basis. They do use the benchmarks to determine AIS services as well. That's one of the main things that we use for math AIS. And then they share the information with the math AIS teachers as well as the other assessment methods that we have specific to AIS math. So the other thing that Karen did, and thank you, Karen, for putting all of this together, is she pulled out the specific standards that were really the focus across the board for a particular grade level. So if you're looking at kindergarten from the fall benchmark, if you look at geometry, describe objects in the environment using terms such as above, below, beside, in front of, behind, and next to. I think that gives you an indicator of where kindergartners are with geometry, first of all, because that's not something I would have guessed was necessarily geometry either, right? But that's an area that kindergartners across the board need a little more support on. If we look at winter, count out that many objects from 1 to 20. But then if you move down to 5th grade, you're looking at operations and algebraic thinking, write simple expressions and interpret numerical expressions without evaluating them. Again, write simple expressions. So it's a similar focus skill, so that's something that they continue to need to work on. And then, this is also information that we can share with the middle school when students move up to 6th grade to help them better understand. So again, just to reinforce, the math benchmark, these are all locally created. So then when you flip the page to the middle school scores, these are a nationally produced assessment, the STAR assessment. We do this in math and ELA, but we're looking at if you look at the top 3 rows, you see the math results. The bottom 3 rows are the reading results for our students. The way STAR is designed is it is more adaptive, so it's looking at how students respond to questions, whether they get them right or wrong. If they get them right, they move it on, kind of move up a level. If they get it wrong, they kind of move it down, so it can pinpoint a little bit more. It is based on a computer algorithm, so it does this much more quickly. But again, it gives us information about what focus skills they need to work on in each grade level, whether it's math or ELA. It helps us understand, potentially where students might have problems on state assessments. So I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but I just wanted to give you a quick overview there of what we presented to you. Mrs. Adoma had asked us for comparison to last year so that we could have a better picture of maybe what the learning this year looks like compared to a more regular year last year, or at least the beginning of last year. So Mrs. Brooks is putting that information together, and we'll share that with you next time. Definitely.
My instincts tell me that this profile is very similar to profiles in past years. It's similar to ones that I was looking at 5 years ago. We just can't break through some of these percentages, that's all. Keep at it.
Yeah, we keep working and we keep trying. And then I just wanted to say a quick thing about assessments. I don't remember if Megan had mentioned it in her report, but the middle school will be sitting for the state assessments tomorrow. But a reminder, New York State is doing the assessments because the federal government has required them to do so. So they have taken all accountability off of the assessments as far as the TSI and all of that. It seems like we're going to be continuing on that accountability, that same accountability list until things normalize a little bit. Kind of an interesting side note, our refusal numbers are much lower than they have been for the last several years. So I don't know what to say about that exactly. I just find it kind of interesting. And maybe because we have so many remote students who aren't coming in for it, maybe that makes up the number. But we were expecting hardly any students to actually sit for it. We thought we'd get a lot of refusals this year. And truthfully, the opposite has happened. In talking to my colleagues in other districts in the county, they've experienced the same phenomenon. Even some of the districts who have even higher refusal rates than Highland. So I don't know if this is the beginning of a trend or if we're just at a point where parents just want their kids to school. They're in the data. So I'm not sure on that. And as far as the TSI work overall, I don't have specific, I don't have a presentation to do for you, but we are continuing to look at those plans that we wrote. Looking at some of this assessment data is a big part of that. We're having conversation, we're working with our OCs, content specialists, both in ELA, in math at the middle school, and of course the equity work is a huge part of both of those TSI plans as well as the district level plan. So that is ongoing and constant. So we are continuing with that work. We'll give you more specifics about that. That's all I have for tonight.
Will families receive the reports for the start?
I will look into that. I guess I've kind of gone the assumption that they did, but I don't know the details. I'll ask.
Any questions for Sarah? Thank you, Sarah. Mr. Superintendent?
Yes, Mr. President. So, board members, you may have noticed, so just going up today and tomorrow in all 3 buildings, we put together the Husky Promise Reminder. And this, I believe, is on the website, and I'm going to review it on my phone call next week. So these are just reminders now that the students are back. The Husky Promise, it's for the students. I promise to continue to, because I know they've already been doing these things. A student will continue to check myself for COVID-19 symptoms before I come to school, check my temperature daily, tell a staff member if I start to feel sick, wash my hands or use sanitizer often, protect my school and friends by wearing a face covering, stay home when I'm sick, respect the space of others, social distance whenever possible, protect my community by leading by example, support and encourage my peers, and avoid attending large gatherings outside of school. So these are the things that we need our students, of course our faculty and staff also, but this is really targeted for the students to please continue to do these things so that we can keep everyone safe. The Husky Promise. I got a great email. I know that some of the board members did also. I want to thank, first of all, I've been waiting very patiently for my Girl Scout cookies. And now my wife's going to be very happy that she has her Thin Mints. But I really have to give a shout out to Zoe Chandri, who just did a fantastic job promoting her sales. I always say to students, to faculty and staff, you know, don't just do what's expected. Anyone can do what's expected. Do more than what's expected. So her email to me, and I'm sure to the other people, thank you all for helping me reach my goal of 300 boxes of cookies. With your help, I made it to 500 boxes. And her mom dropped the cookies off. They were in a very nice paper bag with handles. She had a nice hand-drawn picture of herself with a mask on, and then a very nice order review. So, I mean, I've never had such a nicely put together Girl Scout cookie package ever. I'm going back to Zoe next year. I know that we had Luke and other gentlemen who reached their Eagle Scout. I have no doubt, if she so chooses, that Zoe will reach the gold level, which is the equal of an Eagle Scout for the Girl Scouts. So great job, Zoe. Just again for the board and the public, a update on some of the projects. So that we did receive the canopy bids for the canopy for central office, so that'll be taking place in July. So the canopy will be installed this summer. Our library roof, we are still anticipating that that will be done in the month of May. It'll be replaced. We had a meeting last week, and we have a follow-up meeting next week on the interior design of the library. So choosing of the furniture, the layout of the library. So it's very exciting. The students are really going to be quite impressed. Unfortunately, this won't be really all up and going until next year, but it is going to really be a fantastic learning space for all. And then the signage, I know, so we talked about the electronic signs, so that is all still in the works, and that will be done, I believe, also this summer. Basically, all these projects, Mr. Miller knows, these have to be done, you know, by Labor Day, so that we can get all of our paperwork in and get the reimbursement going. So that is all I have for now. Again, I know we already mentioned it again, but it really is fantastic. And I see Mr. Alfonso's here again, our volleyball team, Section 9B champions, first time ever. And this is Coach Gimenez's first year as head coach, so I have high hopes for the future. If she can do this in 1 year, wow.
Thank you, Mr. Bajovi. Any questions? Okay, moving on, Board of Education, new business. Polling service agreement, Highland Central School District and Ulster County Board of Elections. Be it resolved, the Board of Education, based upon the superintendent, approves the attached polling service agreement between Highland Central School District and the Ulster County Board of Elections for the annual meeting, which is to take place on May 18, 2021. May I have a motion, please? Motion by Camille, second by Mike. Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So carried. Postage ballot for election. Be it resolved, the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, recommends the election of the following candidates to serve on the Board of Cooperative Educational Services. Seat number 1, Ellenville, Marla Kaplan. Seat number 2, from the Great District of Highland, Susan Gilmore. Seat number 3, Ontiora, Robert Curran. Seat number 4, at large, James Shaughnessy. Seat number 5, at large, Vincent Petroselli. Can I have a motion, please? Motion by Ed, second by Heather. Discussion.
What does that large mean? Are they running around the Catskills or something?
I believe they have two seats, correct me if I'm wrong, Sue, that run independently, basically. They don't represent a district. Well, I believe James Shaughnessy from Kingston and
Correct.
Vincent Petroselli from Walpole.
You are correct.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Any discussion?
Just want to thank Mrs. Gilmore again for representing Highland and serving on the BOCES board. I know she enjoys it and does a great job. And it's great to have that representation in Highland to BOCES because it makes an even greater bond that we have with BOCES.
Yes. Anyone else?
I just want to say thank you again to Gilmore for continued and enthusiastic representation. The amount of time you spend is very much appreciated.
I agree. She just doesn't enjoy those lavish meetings. She actually brings meaningful information back, so I appreciate it.
It's getting a little deep now.
I think we're all very appreciative of the work you do for BOCES. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? So carried. BOCES administrative budget vote. Be it resolved, the Board of Education, upon a recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approves the Ulster County Board of Cooperative Educational Services administrative budget in the amount of $6,584,731. Can I have a motion, please? Motion by Mike, second by Heather. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Standard workday and reporting. Be it resolved, the Board of Education, upon recommendation of the superintendent, hereby establishes the following standard workdays for district clerk and will report to the New York State and local retirement system based on timekeeping system records or their record of activities. Can I have a motion, please? Motion by Ed, second by Camille. Discussion?
This just makes sense.
Somebody's going to ask that question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. BOCES cooperative bidding. Whereas it is the desire of the participating school districts of the Board of Cooperative Educational Services, Ulster County, adopting this resolution to jointly request bids for certain commodities to be determined by the superintendent of this school district from time to time for 2021-22 school year. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Highland Central School District hereby agrees to participate with other school districts of the Board of Cooperative Educational Services, Ulster County, New York, in the joint bidding of commodities be requested by the school district purchasing agent and approved by the superintendent, and be it further resolved that the specifications that prepared by the steering committee of the participating school districts are presented to this Board of Education will be used, and that this board, if it desires to purchase these commodities, agrees to purchase said commodities at the lowest bid price recommended by the steering committee of the joint school districts, provided, however, that each participating Board of Education in exercising its legal responsibilities has the right to reject and or modify the recommendation of the steering committee in the awarding of the bid. And be it further resolved that the invitation to bid will be advertised by BOCES in the Kingston Daily Freeman, the Middletown Times Herald Record, and the Poughkeepsie Journal in accordance with the provisions of Section 103 of the General Municipal Law. Can I have a motion, please? Motion by Camille, second by Ed. I know in the second paragraph, purchasing agent and approved by the superintendent is one and the same.
Yes.
That'll change. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Old business. Public hearing application for ballot. Public hearing to take place at our next meeting, May 4th at 7 p.m. for the annual budget and election. This hearing will take place at the auditorium prior to open Board of Education meeting. Our open meeting will immediately follow the close of the public hearing.
And then, I forgot to mention in my report, so Victoria McLaren, our business official, will be coming in a few days next week, so she'll be here this coming Monday, so I'll be touring her around the district. And then on the May 4th board meeting, she's starting on May 3rd, but then Dr. Gottlieb will also be there that night, with permission. So that they can both, along with myself, present the official budget to the board and the community.
Thank you. Okay, another FYI application for ballot. Please note that for this upcoming school vote, only voters who do not wish to appear at the polling place for fear of contracting or spreading COVID can check off temporary illness or physical disability on the application for ballot. The request for application must be received by the district clerk no later than May 11th. If it is to be mailed, otherwise personally delivered to the clerk no later than May 17th, the day prior to the vote. Application for ballots as well as for military are available on the district's web page. And finally, anybody have anything for the good and welfare of the district?
Yes, as a matter of fact. As you have stated, I'm on the BOCES board. And I do think that this spread out board meeting is going to be going on for a long time. And I'm so glad that you asked Farah to talk into the microphone, because I'm always hoping that the folks down there would really talk into the microphone. BOCES has the most incredible speaker system in our spread out meetings, and it's wireless. And I was wondering if you would be willing to take a look into it.
Yes, I think, that's different from the other thing that you talked about? So we'll be...
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, this is a microphone.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, when we go to BOCES to look at the bar, I'll also talk to Dr. Corey about what they use for their board meetings.
Because not everyone is like you, Tom. I could probably hear you if you were on the other side of the building.
You gotta go right up to it, just like this.
Yeah.
Sue, I think I used those at the last meeting I went to at BOCES. They were really...
Aren't they just awesome? It seems like the person is just sitting right next to you when they could be way over there.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how they do that system, but I enjoyed it too, because I was thinking not so much about the board meetings, but other interactive things.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem.
I think, Sue, all the requests for the next meeting, that we possibly can have a couple of portable mics so we can get started. Not everyone has a mic in front of them, and you actually have to speak directly into the mic.
Yes, you do.
Otherwise, it doesn't carry, and it is difficult to hear, and I agree, because earlier on, it was very difficult to hear Farah and Jay speak. And I think it's important that everyone has the opportunity to hear all the board members and the student reps and our administrative team, especially being live streamed for the community to listen in, because I know listening to that is also very difficult to pick up. So we will address those issues.
In all fairness, what we have here are basic mics. I mean, they have, as much as you want to spend, they're there. But I also support the improvement in quality just for the community engagement reason.
Yeah, I just want to say happy Administrative Professional Day to all our staff, all the hard work you do behind the scenes, so we appreciate it.
I think we have an administrative assistant here. Mrs. Ingraham is here.
Okay, anything else for the good welfare of the district? We have no executive session to go back into, so I will ask for a motion to adjourn. Motion made by Tom, seconded by Camille. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.